And this is Ken Kreitzer for Sons of the American Legion Radio, and we're covering Army football year round. And we have a chance to talk with a friend of ours from Army football, defensive lineman, class of 2015, and now out in Missouri, and that is Bobby Kough. Bobby, how are you today?
I'm well. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. Good to see you again. And you were part of a defensive line for Army in the early portion of the decade, and had some big games. What were some of the moments that stand out from you for your Army football career?
Oh man, there's quite a few. But if we're talking big games, I would definitely say our home game against Boston College. That's when I actually recorded my first sack, so that's a big memory for me. That home game against Air Force as well in 2012. I think that was one of our better defensive performances during my whole.
Yeah, 41-21 win over Air Force.
Yeah, that was a great effort by our defense. That was a great game.
Yeah. And, one of the games in your career that really stood out to me was the day that Stanford came in and played at Yankee Stadium, and a full house. And Stanford was a top 10 team that year. Kevin Hogan was their quarterback. And your Army defensive unit was really all over the Stanford offense in that game. Tell us, do you remember anything stand out in your memory about that game against Stanford?
Yeah. I remember, we were getting interviewed before the game and people had already wrote us off. And that definitely sparked the fire in the locker room. We went out there and I just remember the defense. We just had a spark about us. And we played well. Stanford was a great team that year. But it was one of those games that we came together as a defense and did the best we could.
Yeah, no, it was a very competitive game into the fourth quarter. Big house. That was the biggest buzz I can remember at Yankee Stadium was that game. And seeing there were a couple hundred Stanford fans up in the upper corner of the upper deck. And, another game that stood out that you had a big win in was when you played Louisiana Tech. And as I recall, that game, you had a 35-16 win. But I believe that was the game you played down in the Cotton Bowl in Dallas. Is that correct?
Yeah. So that game was actually a really interesting game. I think we had a big lightning delay or weather delay with that one as well. We went back in the locker room and it was tough to keep the energy up. But we came out and we had a great game. We had a defensive lineman, Colin Linkle, who he had back-to-back sacks that game. So as a defensive line, we got after the quarterback pretty well.
Yeah. And your senior year, one of the games that stood out because we do work with the Yankees is that was you guys played Connecticut down at Yankee Stadium and pulled out a nice win. And I believe that was the last game that Army's played at Yankee Stadium out of the 3-game series. What stood out that's certainly a neat place to play.
Yeah, so I was actually a part of the team that played Notre Dame there. So it was nice to come back and kind of get a little bit of revenge against a different opponent and get a win there at Yankee Stadium. So that was really cool.
Well, you got to tell us about what it was like. I remember the night at Yankee Stadium quite well. It was the first college football game played there, and full house. It was a Notre Dame home game, so it was all their fans and their band. But what stood out about that game against Notre Dame from your perspective?
Man, so I was a young guy back then. So walking on Yankee Stadium, it was almost overwhelming. I remember I was walking and I actually called my dad at the time and I was just telling him, like, Dad, I'm standing in the middle of Yankee Stadium right now. So that was one of those moments that I'll never forget. Really cool opportunity to play there.
Yeah, afterwards, that was a game that Notre Dame got a couple of touchdowns ahead of you in the first half, and then I think it was very close in the second half. And afterwards, we talked to Steve Anderson, the linebacker, about it. And he just said, guys, turn off the scoreboard, play football the way you know how to play football, and make the plays. And you really did in the second half of that game against Notre Dame.
Yeah. Yep. I think if I remember correctly, we came up with some big stops and we were moving the ball. But again, Notre Dame was one of those opponents that they were just tough.
No, they were a very good team, but that was a standout night at the new Yankee Stadium. You got a chance to play. Now let's get and talk a little bit about what you've been up to since we saw you last at West Point, and tell us a little bit about your life after West Point. Some of the places that you've served in the Army.
Okay, so right after I graduated, I went down to good old Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. That's where they have the engineer Ebolik. So I spent a good bit of time there. I actually was stationed there as a follow-on assignment. I went to Korea, I want to say 2 weeks after I graduated from Ebolik. Went out to Korea. I worked as a horizontal construction PL.
What is
so
that?
That was
you said a horizontal. What was that job?
So basically, we would roll around with the bulldozers and the graders and stuff like that.
Okay.
We also worked with a route clearance company. So we would go, and if they needed any sort of things moved off of the route, we would take our bulldozers. But for the most part, we did a lot of road repair, road restoration, things along those lines.
Very good. Now, how long were you in Korea?
Oh, I was in Korea. It was a 9-month rotation. I showed up a little bit late, so I actually was replacing somebody. So I want to say about 6 months.
Okay. What was that like? I mean, my dad served in the Army in Korea in 1957, actually, and he always felt good about how Korea prospered as a country after the Korean War with being allied with the United States. How did you see that growth there in Korea?
Yeah, it was a good time. Learning about their culture, seeing kind of the relationship that they've had with us as a country. All of that stuff was really, really interesting. I got to learn quite a bit about our history together. We had Katusas with us that would basically act as our kind of like guides of the area in a way. And I got really close with my Katusa. I believe his name was Hung Suk Lee. I still message him every once in a while on Facebook, but it was a cool opportunity to go out there and go somewhere different, learn a different culture. So that honestly, that was probably one of the, I would say that was one of the better times of my Army career.
Okay. Where'd you head off to after that?
So after that, I went back to Fort Leonard Wood for a little bit. Then I kind of got caught up in some NTC rotations. I was a guest OC out there, so kind of dealing with some stuff out there at Fort Irwin, California, just for about a month at a time, nothing crazy. And then I got married. To
Congratulations!
Yeah, thank you. So I got married to a West Point volleyball player, class of 15, Molly McDonald. And then once that happened, we did the Married Army Couples Program, and they sent us to Fort Bliss, Texas. We spent about, I would say, a year and a half there before I came back to Fort Leonard Wood for Triple C. Got my master's.
What is Triple C?
Captain's Career Course.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So in that time, I
have to ask you some of the Army vernacular.
Yeah, gotcha. So some of the time in there, I promoted to first lieutenant, obviously, then captain. Once I promoted, went to Captain's Career Course. Got my master's from Missouri Science and Technology.
Yeah, tell us about that. What was in that master's degree, Missouri Science and Technology University? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so that was a little program that the engineers have at Fort Leonard Wood. They have a little partnership with Missouri S&T. So basically, while you're going through Captain's Career Course, you have the opportunity to take night classes. And then after that, you have several months where you can just be a full-time student at S&T. So I took advantage of that. That was a pretty cool experience. It was good to you wear civilian clothes every day and kind of get a little bit of the college experience. And then following that, I took a role as an instructor for Ebolik. I was teaching vertical construction. And then I finished up my time in the...
What is vertical construction? Now, you explained horizontal, that's the bulldozers. Now, what is vertical?
So vertical, it's a lot of just buildings. So like sea huts, any sort of vertical structure. I guess in civilian terms, it would just be, I would be a contractor essentially, like a project manager. Yeah.
I'm learning Army engineering terminology 101 here tonight. This is good.
Yeah. So that was a pretty cool job. I was able to give back and, teach some of the new lieutenants coming through. And then I finished my time in the Army off as a platoon trainer. So that's a little bit different than an instructor. What you do there is you take one of those Ebolik classes and you're basically their officer mentor. You make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do, give them advice when they need it. You teach them up on you coach them up on a couple things, and then, see them through to graduation. So that was pretty cool.
Okay. So were you in the Corps of Engineers?
No. So it's all kind of like broken out. So the Corps of Engineers is kind of like a facet of the engineer branch. So no, I was actually, so the unit, I was in Force Com for the first part of my career. And then I switched over to TRADOC, which is like the training and doctrine. So I was just in training. I was in TRADOC portion of the MESCO at Fort Leonard Wood.
Okay. And you were a systems management major at West Point. Is that correct?
Yeah.
What was in that program?
Oh man, you're having me reach back. So that was just a lot of developing systems, understanding what a system is. So really anything can be a system. I remember talking about anything from iPhones to airplanes and just talking about how to manage different pieces that, at play when developing the system.
Well, so much technology has come out, and even in the last 5 years, and I think a lot of the program, the systems engineering major that a lot of the athletes take, being a very worthwhile program, sounds similar to what you were involved with.
Yeah, it was a pretty good major. I really enjoyed. I was with Colonel Edward Teague. I remember him very, very well. He was my capstone instructor, and he was actually the head there of the systems management program. So it was valuable stuff, definitely.
Now, I got to say thank you for your service to our country as you've completed your Army tour. Well, tell us what you're doing now.
So currently I am working for another old grad, Jimmy Vreeland. He was a class of 2003, old football player, played receiver. So he started a real estate company out here in good old St. Louis, and he hired me on to run his acquisitions and dispositions department. Okay.
Is there, do you have a future plan, or are you just adjusting to this career transition from the Army?
Yeah, no, I definitely have a future plan. Right now I'm learning. I'm learning, how to run a business, how to improve, make things a little bit more efficient. So I'm going to spend the next, several years working under him, under his mentorship. And then, eventually my goal is to go out and own my own company. Very
good. Now, we work in our veteran support and our radio interviews a lot with career transition for members of the military leaving and trying to find civilian jobs. Some of the officers, even, I find really it's a struggle, even with 20 years experience. And I'm sure you're working with some of the younger enlisted soldiers that you met during your career on moving into the civilian world. Is there a key that you found that helps soldiers, former soldiers, in finding jobs in the civilian sector?
Yeah, I would say networking. That's hands down. the biggest thing, the piece of advice that I would give somebody that's transitioning. Because, being a veteran, we have a basis of trust with one another. So a lot of people, if they find out you're a veteran, they want to, take a chance on you. They want to hire you. So it's really just getting your name out there, going out and networking, telling people what you want to do. I think that's the biggest piece of advice that I would give somebody.
Very good advice. You got to be outgoing. You got to talk to people, and people respect the skills, leadership skills. We were talking a little bit with one of your teammates, Julian Crockett, a couple of weeks ago, and he talked about leadership and how he knows how to run a meeting very well, and he knows how to run groups of people larger than most people his age can do. What did you find about leadership skills? I mean, you were a football player, leader on the defense, and as an officer, what were the leadership skills that you learned in the Army that you think will help you in your civilian career?
The biggest thing that I see helping myself right now is just clear communication, kind of setting a standard, enabling your team to meet and reach that standard and even exceed. And then, just communicating your vision. That's something that I've found to be very, very valuable, because without communication, typically, employees, whether it be soldiers or employees in the civilian world, they don't have a whole lot to go off of. They might not understand the bigger picture. So communication has been a really big tool for me.
Communication and vision. Now that is absolutely a good point of advice. Good point. Tell us now, one of the things that several players that you played with had a chance to play professionally. Think of Josh McNary, Ali Villanueva, and Trent Steelman got a tryout. I remember watching him play in an NFL preseason game. He even caught a pass in the game I saw him.
Yep.
It was neat. But it's a challenge once you go in the Army that the fitness is different. The skills that, endurance that you need in the Army to do the long marches are different than the fast action skills and strength of being a football player. How did you manage that? How did you manage your life after football as far as conditioning? And I know you mentioned to me you had a chance to you did a pro day a few years ago, and you trained back up for that. What do you find the difference between the fitness that you needed to be an Army football player and thinking about being professional, and then the fitness that you need to be a Army officer?
Yeah, I would say, at least when I got out, it was kind of what you said. It was that fast twitch, the difference between fast twitch and endurance. I actually think the Army's going a different route now with the new ACFT. They are training people to be, they're training people like athletes, because we do go out there and in the military, and we do a lot of things that require, a specific type of training. And sometimes a 2-mile run and doing push-ups and sit-ups for time isn't a great measurement. So I would say, the initial thing when I got out was, when I left West Point, was just run. I would just go and I would run, and I wasn't good at it at first. It took me a while. I had to start off slow. I was running into just little aches and pains with my knees and my joints and stuff like that. I think, probably because of my weight at the time and just stuff from football. But once I got it down, I was able to actually run a couple marathons.
Good for you.
So yeah, so those I ended up doing for the Friends for Michael Foundation, Colonel Mike Quinn. So those were pretty cool, and that was kind of like the pinnacle of my running career. I'm not too sure if I'm gonna go out and run any other marathons. I might if I get bored, but no. So I would say just transitioning into endurance, and then when I geared back up to try to go and play football again, then I had to get a little bit more regimented. I had to get back to the speed work, agility, the fast twitch, and I was almost like a baby deer when I first started doing that stuff again. It was just so different from, going on those long runs to going back to cone drills and stuff like that. So It's definitely a transition.
No, it certainly is a big difference. But both are, as they say, the academy. Every cadet's an athlete, and just and necessary and a necessary part of cadet training for the endurance that Army soldiers use all the time. Now, you mentioned a charitable project, and you have been very active. We've had a couple of conversations over the years about some of the charitable projects that you've been working on supporting. Tell us about some of the efforts that you've worked on.
Yeah, so the big two, I ran the St. Louis Marathon. That was my first marathon, and I think a couple months after that, I went out and ran the Marine Corps Marathon. So I did both of those with the Friends for Michael Foundation. I raised up some money. I had people donate, which was very, very generous. And that money ended up going towards children whose families have been either the child or the families have been impacted by brain cancer. So that obviously, reaching back to my past, that was a very significant cause that I wanted to be a part of. I wanted to give back, and running marathons was at the time the best way that I could, give back.
Sure. Now, is the Friends for Michael's Foundation still active?
Yeah. So I think they're moving towards scholarships. They're kind of going that route,
Okay.
donations and stuff like that. I'm not too sure how many more like marathon type events they're going to put on. I keep on bugging Mike Quinn about it, trying to get him out there and get those marathons going again. But yeah, it's still operating. It's still helping out families, and it's an amazing cause by an amazing guy.
No, you've done some terrific work on different projects like that. Now, got to tell us about some of your teammates. Who you hear from, and where are they now?
Oh, I would say my daily contacts are Angel Santiago, Justin Newman, and Clayton Keller. So those are probably the three guys that I communicate with the most. Clayton's actually a Green Beret out at Fort Carson, Colorado. Justin Newman actually just got out. He was the only other engineer in the 15-year group. He just got out recently. He's working down in Texas, and then Angel's been out for a little bit. He's out in Savannah, Georgia.
In Georgia, okay. I know it's from, I believe it's from California. I knew Angel relatively well. I knew him when he was also one of the postgraduate coaches at the prep school, and that's good. Maybe we can catch up with him and hear how he's doing. And is there something, when you look back at West Point? I mean, it's such a tough 47 months. Did you go to the prep school before that?
Yep, I sure did.
So it's another year before that, and we watch it. I mean, we're amazed at what's involved. What do you take away from your West Point experience? You had the combination of playing football, military training, and then preparing for a career in engineering. And it's 24/7, very little time off. What did you take away from that, from the West Point experience for you?
I think the biggest thing that I've learned throughout all of this is delayed gratification. So especially at West Point, even some in the Army, like things can get rough. There can be some dark days and some days where you're struggling and you're asking yourself, hey, is this stuff worth it? And you just got to put your head down and push through it, and then it all kind of comes to fruition down the road. So I would say delayed gratification. I'm still working on it. I'm definitely not great with that, but I think that's one of the biggest things that I've learned from my time in the Army and at West Point.
Well, I think you're well down the discipline curve over most of us. Anyway, that's always very evident in watching the cadets and graduates at West Point. Now, tell us last couple of years, Army's had some big seasons, 3 Commander-in-Chief trophies under Jeff Monken, and some of the younger players when you were there went on to have big roles in in the success as the program turned. What has it been like for you to watch the team, the last 4 or 5 years and some of the success that they've had?
It's been amazing. Coach Monken came in there and he did a great job with the program. It's good to see that our younger brothers are out there winning and enjoying themselves. And it just seems like the atmosphere revolving around Army football is just so positive right now. We're getting looked at on a national scale. People at least are talking about us. So we've given some really tough opponents, tough games or even beat them. So it's been refreshing. It's been nice to see.
No, absolutely. We've been fortunate. We've covered the team now for 10, 11 years, and we enjoy watching people like yourself grow. From the time you were a freshman to, getting playing time as a sophomore and big games throughout your career there. So it's really great to visit with you, and I hope we can do this again. And congratulations. Now I understand from a few photos, I think, do you have an addition to the family?
Yeah, I do. We call him around here, we call him Little Bob.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's Bobby Kough the fourth. Yeah, that's been a transition in itself, but it's been amazing. Love the little guy to death, and that's really been just growing our family. Molly and I, it's been amazing.
No, that's terrific. Congratulations to you both on starting a family. And just maybe finishing up, is there a final thought about when you think of West Point? You've got a couple of teammates you keep in close touch with, and you had a very competitive football career. It led to a career in the Army, and now a civilian career and opportunities, graduate school. When you think back about West Point and how it's changed your life, what are some of the thoughts that you have?
Oh man, no, it's played such a big role. At the time when I was going through it, I didn't really recognize it, but just the shared suffering that you experience with the brothers to your left and right. And that's why some of us are just so close. And even when you get out into the Army and you meet guys and you meet, your fellow lieutenants, captains, it's the same deal. There's kind of that shared suffering and just the discipline and the morality, the ethics, things like that. As I've gotten into the civilian world and just I have a little bit more experience under my belt as I get older, like you start to appreciate those things that, back at West Point were just so common.
Absolutely. Well, Bobby Kough, now you were originally from California. Tell me the name of the town again.
I grew up in Rancho Cucamonga, California.
Okay. I wanted you to pronounce that. No, that's terrific. And now you're living in the St. Louis area. Is that correct?
Yep. We live out in Wentzville, Missouri, greater St. Louis area.
Yeah, that's great. And class of 15, and you married another West Point, have a baby. That's great, and great really to chat and reminisce about some big days of Army football that you were a part of, and it's fun to just really good to see you again.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate everything. Your background's really bringing back some memories, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, we were able to cover the home games this year, and I think that's one of the games in November. You got a new lacrosse building, I think, since you were there in that corner. Yep. And they're looking at another refurbishing of the stadium, possibly replacing those east stands, and we'll see what happens coming up on that. But Bobby Kough, thank you so much for spending a little time with us with Sons of the American Legion Radio. And maybe we can have you call into one of our alumni shows next fall.
Yeah, yes, sir. Thank you for the opportunity.
Our pleasure. Good to see you. And this is Ken Kreitzer for Sons of the American Legion Radio. We represent the 2 million veterans of the American Legion and the 350,000 members of the Sons of the American Legion supporting America's veterans. And Bobby reminded me of You know, my dad was a World War II and Army officer, stayed in the Army through Korea, was in Korea where you served in 1957. So you brought back a nice memory. And so great to see you again.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, it's Ken Kreitzer for Sons of American Legion Radio from White Plains, New York. We're part of Post 135 in downtown White Plains. Have a good evening, everybody.